Let's be honest. Leaving someone you once cared about can feel like the most vulnerable thing in the world, especially when part of you is still hoping they'll wake up, realize what they lost, and come running after you with the emotional maturity they never quite had while you were together. But here's the truth no one tells you. You don't need to slam the door. You don't need to announce your worth. And you definitely don't need to wait around for karma to show up with a front row seat and popcorn. Because the moment you leave like you never needed him, not out of spite, but out of clarity, the game changes. Not just for him, but for you. This isn't about being cold, it's about being done. Done chasing, done explaining, done shrinking. And that, my friend, is when karma starts doing her quiet, poetic work. While you'll be too busy living the life he thought you'd never have without him. When you leave someone, especially someone who took your presence for granted, how you do it matters more than you think. The first instinct for most people is to try and explain, to plead, to justify, to express every hurt in hopes the other person will finally get it. But the truth is, people rarely understand your value in the moment you try to prove it. They understand it in your absence. They understand it when you stop showing up, when you stop replying, when you stop making space in your life for someone who didn't know how to value it. That's why your exit, calm, clear, and unapologetically quiet, is your real power move. There's something incredibly strong about walking away without needing to throw a tantrum. Not because you didn't feel anything, but because you've finally realized that begging someone to see you isn't love. It's survival. And you're not here to survive love. You're here to experience a connection that feeds your soul, not one that drains you dry. Walking away like you never needed him doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you care about yourself more. Enough to stop trying to earn the affection or effort that should have come naturally. It's in that silent departure, the one without dramatics, that the power truly lies. Because when someone expects you to chase them, explain yourself, or unravel just to prove your love, and you don't, it leaves a void, a silence that echoes, a space where your presence used to fill everything, now replaced with nothing but their own thoughts. That's when the mind starts racing. Why didn't she fight for me? Why did she walk away like I didn't matter? The irony, of course, is that they ask these questions only after they've made you feel exactly that, like you didn't matter. But here's the twist. By leaving like you never needed him, you flip the dynamic completely. The weight your absence. You're no longer the person clinging to what you hoped he would become. You're the one who saw reality clearly and decided that loving yourself meant letting go. No anger, venom, just clarity. That's powerful. That's what they remember. Because drama is forgettable. Dignity, on the other hand, leaves an imprint. The truth is, when someone doesn't step up, they're not blind. They're comfortable. Comfortable in knowing you'll always be there, always forgive, always come back. When you finally leave without making it a show, you break that comfort. You disrupt the pattern. And in that disruption, they're forced to face a version of you they weren't prepared for, the version who respects herself too much to beg for crumbs. Even if they never come back, even if karma never gives you the moment where they crawl back and confess what they lost, you win, because your exit wasn't about him. It was about you reclaiming your energy. You proved to yourself that you can love deeply without losing your self-worth in the process. That's not just a win. That's a transformation. And sure, maybe he'll realize what he had. Maybe he won't. But that's not your story anymore. Your story is what you build from the moment you choose yourself. Not in rage, but in resolve. You don't leave like you never cared. You leave like you finally realized you deserve someone who doesn't make you question if they care about you. That's not revenge. That's evolution. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. People often confuse it with coldness, indifference, or apathy, but it's none of those things. Real detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing someone's attention, approval, or affection in order to feel whole. That shift, while subtle on the outside, changes everything internally. It's the moment you no longer wake up wondering what he's thinking, whether he'll text you back, or if he'll finally show up as the version of himself you kept holding out hope for. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're just done living in reaction to someone who can't meet you where you are. It's empowering because up until now, your emotions may have been tied to his behavior. If he was warm, your day was bright. If he pulled away, your self-worth took a hit. That back and forth, that emotional instability, becomes a cycle of self-doubt. And over time, you start confusing intensity for intimacy. But when you step into detachment, you create space between his actions and your identity. You stop making his inconsistency mean something about you. You stop needing his presence to validate your importance. The glow-up that follows isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, spiritual. You begin making decisions for you, not in hopes of being noticed, but because you're noticing yourself. You're listening to what you want, what you need, and you're honoring that without looking over your shoulder for his reaction. It's no longer about whether he sees your worth. It's about whether you do. That's the kind of self-awareness that makes you magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anyone, but because you're finally attracting everything that's aligned with who you really are. One of the clearest signs you've detached is when you stop rehearsing the imaginary conversations in your head. The ones where you say the perfect thing and he finally understands what he lost. You don't need that anymore. You're not looking for closure from him because you've already given it to yourself. You've stopped fantasizing about what could be because you've accepted what is. That level of emotional maturity isn't flashy, but it's powerful. It means you've stopped asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" and started asking, "Why did I stay somewhere I had to keep asking that question?" And the best part, you begin to feel lighter. Your energy returns. You're not weighed down by the emotional debt of trying to fix something that was never yours to fix. You're not drained from over-explaining, over-analyzing, or overcompensating. That emotional freedom gives you clarity, creativity, and confidence. And yes, people will notice, especially the ones who once took your energy for granted. It's almost ironical. The moment you stop needing their validation is the exact moment they begin to feel your absence. But by then, you're no longer interested in proving your worth. You're too busy living it. What's beautiful about this shift is that it doesn't require a dramatic moment. You don't need to slam doors or make big speeches. Detachment happens quietly, and it happens inside of you. It's the quiet unfollow, the unanswered message, the decision to prioritize peace over performance. You don't need to announce that you're over it. You just are. And because you no longer need to be seen to feel valuable, you start moving in ways that are aligned with your highest self. The irony is, that's exactly what makes you more radiant than ever. You're no longer driven by desperation. You're anchored in self-respect. So no, detachment isn't cold. It's clear. It's not that you don't care, it's that you care about you more. And when you start living from that place, everything begins to shift. Not just how others treat you, but how you treat yourself. That's when karma kicks in. Not as revenge, but as reward. Not because you waited for it, but because you finally stopped waiting for him. When you leave someone, it's natural for your mind to start replaying the highlight reel. The good moments, the laughter, the late night talks, the promises. You start to question yourself. Was it really that bad? Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you just need to give it more time. That nostalgia hits hard. But here's the catch. It's not him you're missing. It's the version of you wanted him to be. The fantasy, the potential, the hope you clung to that maybe, just maybe, he would grow into the man you believed he could become. But that version never truly existed, or if it did, it was only ever glimpsed in moments carefully chosen or inconsistently offered. You're not wrong for wanting love, connection, or commitment. But there's a difference between wanting those things and projecting them onto someone who who doesn't actually give them to you in a consistent, healthy way. That's what keeps people stuck. Not the reality of the relationship, but the story they've written in their heads. It's the almost that hurts the most, because he almost said the right thing. He almost changed. He almost showed up. And every time he did, even just a little, it felt like proof that you weren't wrong to stay, that maybe he was capable of being the person you needed. But deep down, you knew it was always short-lived, conditional, fleeting. The hardest part of leaving is accepting that you didn't lose something real. You let go of something imagined. It's grieving what could have been, not what actually was. And that grief is confusing because it doesn't always come with clear evidence. There's no cheating scandal or big betrayal. Sometimes the loss is just slow and subtle, being emotionally neglected, feeling like you're the only one trying, waiting on effort that never comes. And yet, those small unmet needs build into something massive over time. You don't wake up one day devastated. You slowly unravel. That's what you're healing from. And when you finally do walk away, your brain doesn't automatically let go of the fantasy. It takes time to untangle yourself from the version of him you created in your mind. It takes effort to stop checking your phone, to stop rereading old messages, to stop hoping for the apology or explanation that might never come. But every time you choose reality over fantasy, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you say, "No, that wasn't enough," even when it hurts, you rebuild the standard you once compromised. There's power in admitting that he's not the one. Not because he was a villain, but because he wasn't able or willing to meet you where you are. And maybe that's not his fault. Maybe he doesn't even know how to love in the way you need. But that doesn't mean you should stay and teach him. You're not here to raise someone into emotional maturity. You're here to be met, not molded. You're here for real connection, not for potential packaged as promises. Letting go means facing the truth without sugarcoating it. He's not coming back as the man you imagined. If he was capable of being that person, he already would have shown up as him. And if he does become that man one day, it won't be because you stayed. It'll be because you left and he was finally forced to face himself. But by then, it won't matter because you'll be gone. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You'll have moved forward into a life that no longer needs to be built on fantasies. You'll be building something real. With yourself first. And that's the only version of love that's worth waiting for. When someone doesn't see your value, it's easy to start believing you don't have any. That's the trap so many people fall into. Not because they're weak, but because love makes you vulnerable. You give your time, your energy, your heart. You show up, you invest, you try. And when all of that goes unnoticed or unappreciated, it starts to feel personal. You begin questioning yourself. Was I too much? Was I not enough? But the truth is, someone else's inability to recognize your worth says far more about them than it does about you. Just because someone couldn't see your light doesn't mean you weren't shining. It just means they were never looking closely enough. And that's where the shift has to happen. When you stop outsourcing your value to people who don't know how to measure it. You stop waiting for them to give you the affirmation you've been withholding from yourself. You stop hoping they'll wake up one day and finally say the words you've been craving. Because maybe they will. Maybe they'll realize what they lost. But by then, you'll be in a place where you no longer need their validation. You'll have already given it to yourself. The energy you were pouring into trying to be enough for someone else, that energy has a better home with you. That love you were trying to give away so desperately, redirect it inward. Invest it in your growth, your passions, your friendships, your health, your peace. The relationship you wanted to build with him. Build it with yourself first. That's not selfish. That's survival. That's healing. You can't keep giving love as a form of negotiation, hoping that if you love someone hard enough, they'll finally treat you right. That's not love. That's bargaining. And your worth was never meant to be a bargaining chip. So start asking the real questions. What lights you up? What makes you feel powerful? What version of your life excites you when you wake up in the morning? What kind of people challenge you to grow? Respect your boundaries and celebrate your presence without needing to be convinced of it. You start showing up for that version of yourself, and suddenly, everything changes. You become magnetic, not because you're chasing anyone, but because you've stopped chasing altogether. You've made peace with walking alone, if it means walking in alignment. And yes, people will notice, especially the ones who didn't value you before. It's funny how that works. The moment you stop trying to win someone over is the moment they start wondering why you ever wanted them in the first place. But that's not your concern anymore. You're not building a life in hopes that he'll see it and come running. You're building it because it's yours, because you deserve it, because you've spent enough time dimming your light to make other people comfortable. And now, you're ready to shine without apology. This is where karma starts to work, not as revenge, but as restoration. Not as a punishment for him, but as a reward for you. Because life has a way of meeting you where your energy lies. And when your energy shifts from proving your value to embodying it, the people, opportunities, and love that show up will feel completely different. You won't have to beg for it. You won't have to chase it. It will find you because you finally found yourself. So no, you weren't invisible. You were just in the wrong room. The right people don't need convincing. They recognize your worth the moment you walk in, not when you leave. And the more you invest in the only guarantee you have you, the less you'll tolerate anything that asks you to forget who you are just to be loved. There's this idea that in order to heal from heartbreak, you need to see the other person suffer. That they need to come crawling back, admit they were wrong, and feel every ounce of the pain they put you through. But karma doesn't work on your timeline, and it doesn't always give you the front row seat you think you deserve. The truth is, karma isn't theatrical. It's quiet. It's slow. It doesn't crash in like a storm. It seeps in like a lesson. And the beauty of it is, you don't need to do anything for it to work. You don't have to get revenge, craft the perfect response, or wait around to see what happens. All you have to do is let go, and let life do the teaching. You see, when someone treats you carelessly, when they ignore your needs, break your trust, or play with your emotions, they're not escaping consequences. Even if they walk away acting like nothing happened, there is no real escape. Because the kind of person who mistreats someone who loved them deeply is already living with a kind of internal disconnection that you'll never fully understand. They move through life half numb, chasing the next distraction, the next ego boost, the next temporary high. That's not peace. It's avoidance. And eventually, life catches up. But here's the most important part. You don't need to wait for that moment. You don't need to stand by the door, watching for signs that karma is working. That only keeps you stuck in a loop where your healing is dependent on their downfall. And that's not real healing. That's delayed freedom. You deserve to move on whether they get it or not. You deserve to be happy without needing confirmation that they're miserable. Because what you're really searching for isn't revenge, it's validation. You want to know that your pain mattered, that your love wasn't wasted, that they finally understand what they lost. But if you spend your life waiting for them to see it, you end up wasting the very thing you're trying to reclaim in your time, your power, your joy. Let karma do what it does best, move silently. And let yourself do what you do best when you're not tied to someone who couldn't love you right. Thrive. Pour that energy into your life. Work on your peace, your growth, your goals. Build something so fulfilling that even if you never hear a single apology, you won't care. Because your life is your closure. That's the irony. The better you do, the less you need them to suffer. Because once you feel full within yourself, you realize their journey is no longer connected to yours. You're no longer seeking balance through their regret. You've found it through your own evolution. And rest assured, they will think about it. Maybe not now, maybe not soon. But there will come a day when they scroll through your photos, see your smile, feel the absence of your energy, and remember how you made them feel. Not out of guilt, but out of contrast. Because nothing they chase will match the depth you offered freely. And while that moment might never be spoken aloud, it will echo in them. That's karma. Not the dramatic downfall, but the quiet realization, the one that arrives too late. But by then, you won't be waiting to hear it. You'll be too busy living a life that makes their approval completely irrelevant. You'll be so far ahead emotionally, spiritually, and mentally that even if they came back, you wouldn't recognize them. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Karma doesn't always give you what you want, but it always gives people what they need to learn. And you. You've already passed the test. Now it's time to move forward and let life handle the rest. Silence is one of the most underrated forms of communication, especially when it comes to love and loss. We live in a world where closure is romanticized, where people are told they need a final conversation, a long explanation, a moment of mutual understanding to be able to move on. But the truth is, most closure doesn't come from another person. It comes from the moment you decide you're done handing over your peace in exchange for their confusion. It comes from the choice to stop talking, stop explaining, and stop giving someone the opportunity to hurt you again just because you think it will help you heal. You don't owe anyone a performance when you walk away. Not someone who repeatedly dismissed your feelings. Not someone who listened only to respond, never to understand. Not someone who made you feel like you had to constantly defend your needs. That version of you, the one who over-explained, over-apologized, and overextended yourself, deserves rest. And sometimes the most powerful way to give yourself that peace is to go quiet. No text, no final paragraph, no emotional breakdown begging to be heard, just space, stillness, distance. That silence is louder than any words you could possibly say, because it says, I don't need you to understand anymore. I understand myself now. And that silence doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity. The clarity that says if they really valued you, you wouldn't be standing here trying to prove why you were worthy of their love. You wouldn't be trying to teach someone how to treat you. You wouldn't be waiting for them to finally get it. Silence says you've moved past the point of trying to be chosen and stepped fully into the realization that you choose yourself. When someone who's used to your energy, your effort, your presence, suddenly finds themselves met with silence, it shakes them. Not because they suddenly become self-aware, but because they lose access to the comfort you consistently gave them. They start to feel the weight of your absence. And in that space, a truth begins to surface. One that no conversation could deliver. Your silence becomes the mirror they didn't want to face. It reflects their behavior, their choices, and their emotional absence in the relationship. It forces them to sit with everything they once brushed off when you were still trying to make them understand. But here's the important part. Silence isn't a strategy to make them miss you. It's not a tactic. It's a boundary. It's saying, I no longer accept confusion where I deserve clarity. It's honoring your own growth, not waiting for theirs. Because even if they come back, even if they want to reopen the dialogue, you'll find that you no longer crave the conversation. You'll have already given yourself the answers you used to beg them for. That's what real healing looks like. Not a dramatic ending, but a quiet one. One that no longer needs validation to feel complete. People underestimate the power of simply walking away, of not needing to prove anything, of not filling the silence with explanations. But that's where you take your power back. That's where you close the chapter not with a bang, but with peace. And that peace is what they'll remember. Because while they were expecting noise, chaos, emotion, you gave them stillness. And in that stillness, they'll hear everything they ignored while they had you. Closure isn't a shared moment. It's a personal decision. And sometimes the loudest and most liberating thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. Not because you didn't care, but because you finally realized that someone who truly cares wouldn't need convincing. So here's what it all comes down to. You don't need him to change, to apologize, or to notice what he lost. You don't need closure in the form of a final conversation or karma to come knocking on his door with a grand life lesson. What you need, what you deserve, is your own peace, your own clarity, your own decision to stop shrinking, stop waiting, and stop fighting to be seen by someone who only ever looked at you when it was convenient. When you leave like you never needed him, you don't just walk away from him. You walk back to yourself, to your standards, to your power. That's not weakness. That's self-respect in its highest form. And while karma works in her own quiet way, the real transformation, that's you. Choosing yourself, healing without needing a witness, thriving without needing revenge. Because the goal isn't to make him regret losing you. The goal is to become someone who would never settle for someone like him again.